Don't forget, ko-fi.com/stopwritingalone is a real simple way to show your support for what's going on here week after week. Hi, everyone. This is Nicole Rivera, and this is the Stop Writing Alone podcast for writers who are looking for their writing community. I know you want to find readers for your work, but I think your first step is to connect with other writers. That's what we're going to do here at the Stop Writing Alone podcast. We'll do writing prompts and other writing group activities, discover online writing communities, learn how to find local writing groups, or how to make your own. Join us as we explore, learn, and write. This week's episode of Stop Writing Alone is sponsored by the Creative Ways podcast. Host and long-term designer Emma Isaac's podcast features inspiring conversations with successful photographers, musicians, fashion designers, and more, who generously share tactical advice to motivate and educate creatives to stay on the path. Find it where you listen to your podcasts, and be sure to visit her website for a fun freebie at emmaisaacs.co.uk. And you can find that link in the show notes for today's episode. Hi, this is Nicole Rivera, and you're listening to the Stop Writing Alone podcast. In episode 85 of the Stop Writing Alone podcast, I talked to you about writing group peer pressure. And it was all inspired by a book club meeting that happened on the Wednesday before recording the episode. And this is amongst the Stop Writing Alone Happy Campers Club. And we got to a point where we were all hadn't been caught up on our reading and assignments, and one of the members, Amy Strong, said just in conversation, "Hey guys, has anybody heard of this 3-day novel writing contest?" And that was it. We all got into the conversation, we all kind of looked at it, and by the end of the night, almost all of us signed up to be in the 3-day novel writing contest. This week's episode 86 of the Stop Writing Alone podcast, is called The 3-Day Novel Writing Contest Winners. And while there are no determinations of the contest because everything just got submitted, I really felt like everyone that did sign up that day came out by the end of this weekend as incredible winners in productivity, in positivity, in confidence, and I wanted to share those stories with you. But I didn't know how. We kept talking about it on the side, and I said, I haven't asked anybody to sit down and do an interview. We're all still recovering from this weekend-long, binge writing session. But we had our book club again, and of course, because we were all writing these novellas, none of us had caught up on our writing or reading again. So midway through the meeting, I was like, hey guys, would you mind if we just chat about your experiences? And I record it for this week's episode, and everyone was game. So the people that you're going to hear in this week's episode or Jackie Dana. She's from St. Louis, and I will have her link in the show notes. I have Jamie Angevine, who I'll also share her links in the show notes so that you can sign up for her newsletter. She's from Connecticut. Susie Evans Taylor is also on the call, and I've talked to you guys about her for the last 2 weeks, so it's great that she's in this call as well. She writes on the blog Sticks and Stones. And we also have Amy Strong, who got us all into this nonsense in the first place. Amy is from Florida, and I will have a link to her stuff in the show notes as well. But I also want to give you a little bit of background about how we handled writing together for this weekend. because I told you all of those states for a reason. Don't forget, I'm in New York. Also, we had Audria with us, and she's in South Dakota. So we're talking about Florida, New York, Connecticut, Ohio, St. Louis, South Dakota. And I truly feel like I spent the entire weekend with all of these people, even though we are that spread apart, the United States. So basically 2 tools that we used, and the 3-day novel writing contest went from Saturday through Monday. We started at midnight Saturday. So for me, it felt like Friday night until Monday, which was, the midnight Pacific time. So we had 2 social media connectivity tools at our disposal that we used. One is Zoom, which is also how I recorded this conversation with everybody for this week's episode. And the other is the app, which I have discussed with you guys on previous episodes, Marco Polo. So for the Zoom calls, basically all I did, and I'm telling you this so that you can replicate this if you want to try to have virtual connections with writers that you're friends with. But also, I will be opening the doors again soon for you if you are interested in joining this community. But here are the tools. The Zoom link, I created a Zoom room that I just kept open for the entire weekend, only for the people that were a part of this group. So you just click on it that, participants can join before the host. You make sure that everybody in your group has that link, and there you go. It's kind of like a virtual room open all the time for people to write in. And Marco Polo, the app, is basically a video texting sort of thing, and that was really great for moral support in between, and we also had other members of the Happy Campers Club in that chat that hadn't signed up for the 3-day challenge, so you'll hear us talk about them as well. For the Zoom call this time, we really didn't talk at all, and we do talk about that in this conversation coming up. That was the thing that was so intriguing to me at the end of the weekend, because I did think that I was going to need to host some sort of writing sprints to get everybody feeling connected or productive or what have you. We all just showed up and wrote, and many times the video was off and it would just be the pictures of us, and that was enough. So the first question that I asked everybody when we got into this conversation tonight was, why the heck did that work? Why did it work to just have a Zoom call where we're not even talking to one another? So I'm going to put you into this conversation so that you can hear from the ladies why it worked for each of them. But I do want to add one caveat. No one in this call was prepared for a recording today, and that includes me. You will hear many times on my end my son Alex celebrating whatever it was he was watching in the background, and we have pets galore in other calls, so bear with us. We thought we were about to have a very casual chat, and I sort of sprung the idea of recording on everyone. So I think you'll get introduced to that pretty quickly as soon as we enter into this call. From your own perspectives, why you think it helped us so much to have each other in Zoom while we were each going through this, even when for most of the time we weren't even talking. We weren't even doing like our normal write-ins where we do writing sprints and we stop and chat for a second. It was so fascinating to me because it did help me too. So I'm just curious to hear if anybody has opinions about why that was for them.
Well, I can say for me, 2 things. Number one is I knew someone would be in the room and I didn't want them writing alone. Like I wanted them to know that there was someone there with them. And of course my dogs are going to bark.
That's how it goes.
I didn't want them riding alone. So that was number one. The second thing was because I told everybody what time I was going to be there. I didn't want Jamie showing up to ride with me and then her be sitting there going, well, Amy said she was going to be here. Where is she? So it was not just I didn't want anybody riding alone, but the own accountability that I had set up for myself. If I'm really bad at keeping myself accountable to myself, but if I've told someone else who's going to be like, hey, where are you? Then that's a little different. So for me, that's why it worked, even though all it was a picture on the computer.
But that's totally me too. And that's, I've told you guys 1,000 times. That's why Stop Riding Alone works for me so much. It's because I'm telling you guys I'll show up and I claim it's for you, but it's really like the only way I'm going to show up.
Exactly.
So that's cool.
I think the accountability helped me. I remember on Sunday, because Saturday I got up really late because I stayed up really late Friday. And I said to myself on Sunday, I don't want to do that because I really need the hours, right? I need the time. And I wanted to write when you guys were on. So I got up like 2 or 3 hours before I really wanted to, because I wanted to be writing with you guys. And I kind of was like, and I don't want to be that person that's not showing up till 3 o'clock in the afternoon, right? So there was that accountability, but it was also knowing that there were other people writing at the same time, right? So even though we were all just faces on a Zoom call and we weren't talking for hours, sometimes on end before we talk, I knew that you, Nicole, or Amy, or Susie, or Jamie, or Audrey were all writing when I was writing, or at least thinking about it. Maybe you got up and went to the kitchen for a second, but I knew you were in the process. And that made it feel more like we're in it together, even though I didn't see you. And I mean, for all I know, you were just playing games, you know, I just took it on faith. But I knew, I mean, how could you not be writing? It's 3 days to write a novel. So, but I knew you were there with me. And remember the one point, Nicole, where we finished and we had the exact same word count. And I think there's a certain amount of, even though we're over the internet, I think when people are working on something together, there's that energy that's shared. And it's like that woo-woo thing, but I think there's a certain amount of like that creative energy that gets shared across, and that we're all in the same space and we're feeding on that somehow. And you know, it's the same thing when you're in person and everybody's quiet, but everybody's writing and you feel that energy. It somehow works even on the internet. So
that's a good point, that like if we were in a room together, we wouldn't be talking to each other either. We would just be physically seeing each other. But I didn't think going into it that we'd be silent for so long at all. I just thought it would be a lot of either maybe we would need sprints or we'd be talking. So Susie, how about you? How did you feel the 3-day weekend went for you, and the calls? And
well, I got to say that after my comparison breakdown of I suck, I can't do this, you guys have 4,000 words, I have barely 1,000, and then everyone was like, just write, it doesn't matter, just write. And then not necessarily knowing that you guys were writing too, but there was somebody there who, if I wanted to ask a question of, if I wanted to make a comment, if I wanted to, you know, whatever, the chat was there. And I knew that there was somebody there who was doing the same thing I was doing, who would be able to understand my feelings, my questions, whatever. And I had never done anything like this before. I mean, I've written long news articles, but nothing like sitting down and have it spew out of my brain. And it was so weird how I would be typing and I would be thinking, okay, this is what's going to happen. And then other words would come out of my fingers. And I would like, what is that? Oh, I like that better. Okay, let's go with that way. And it was just weird. It was just weird. And it was awesome at the same time.
Wonderful. That's wonderful. I guess, you brought up a really good point about that moment that you had, that lack of confidence or whatever it is. And you weren't alone. I think all of us, I mean, I don't want to speak for everyone. I know that I had that moment a couple of times, especially in the first couple of days. I kept feeling like I was always behind in writing. And I was like, oh my God, this is so ridiculous that I can't even get my words out. I didn't know where I was going next in my story. But Jamie, you had brought up something after we were done. So after everybody had finished, you still had that, and you had finished, you had reached the finish line, and you still had a little bit of that feeling. And I think what you said is that I feel like there's a cool kids table.
Yeah,
and then I'm not sitting at it, and I was just listening, and I'm like, no, how dare you think such a thing? But at the same time, I know that we've all felt it at some point. And like I said, I feel it, and I'm, I'm the stop writing alone lady, and there are times that I'm thinking that I'm not at the stop writing alone table, and it's so ludicrous to think of. So when I hear you say it, I'm like, yes, that's how silly you sound, Nicole, when you think it. So where were you at that point? Because to me personally, like, at least when I finish something, that's usually the one point that I don't feel it, because I'm like, regardless of what everybody else did, at least I got it done. So what was going on with you there?
It was a few things. Like so Friday, I had a hard time coming up with an idea, and I started to come up with something. I had pages and pages, like Friday before I could actually write, of just like, thinking of an outline and stuff. And I just felt like it wasn't making sense, and I couldn't quite figure out why. And I started a whole thing, and then by Saturday, I didn't like it anymore. And then I thought, okay, well, I'll maybe tell the same story, but from someone else's point of view. And I started that, and then I was like, and it's almost like kind of what Susie said, where like one thing was supposed to come out and this whole other thing came out instead. And finally I'm like, I think I just need to go with that. So because of that, it was like, I felt like, it's so weird. So the story that I told, I think there's still things I want to fix with it, but it sort of felt like pretty complete what it was. And I felt really good about it. And then when I was hearing that everyone like I didn't even hit 10. I did not even hit 10. I'm like just below that. And I was like, well, I could just start throwing gobbledygook. But because we were submitting it, it wasn't just like nano, where I could just like throw in extra scenes that I really didn't care about. I'm like,
my grocery list to get the words.
Yeah. I'm like, I can't do that. So actually, if I think about it, I was editing as I went along, because I knew it had to be whatever. And I didn't want to have to deal with like craziness on Monday, like at 8:00 or something. So, right. So then I was like feeling good, and I'm like, okay. And then it was just it was just weird. It was like part of the comparison, but it wasn't really like, I don't know. But I felt like terrible. And I was like, oh my God, this is terrible. So I was like, but knowing that I could go on, completely spill it on Marco Polo and be like, okay, this is how I'm feeling. And that you guys wouldn't be like, wow, secretly laughing. Like, yeah, I was thinking the same thing, Jamie, like about you, you know what I mean? Like, and I was like, okay. And it just made me, and I didn't do it because I was like, they'll all say nice things. I mean, it was just sort of like, this is how I'm feeling. And like, anyone else I tell, they'll be like, oh, no, you did great. You're awesome. But they weren't just doing it. So you guys literally had just done the same thing. But then thinking later, like I said, that, I got through it. And then I was like, and what you said, Nicole, in the Marco Polo, like, what would Jamie a year ago have done? And I was like, Jamie a year ago would have literally thought none of that was possible. None of that. I didn't know any of you guys. Well, actually, no, I knew you, but it wasn't, we didn't have this community, this smaller community right. that we have, Happy Campers. And like, I never would have signed up for the 3-day, like, not in a million years would I have signed up for it if like it hadn't been brought to my attention. And I was like, oh, and like I said, I even had the back and forth being like, I don't even think I want to do it. I want to do something else. But then the rest of me was like, you do want to do it. And I'm like, okay. So I had to like figure that out of being, you're like, oh yeah, Jamie didn't cave to peer pressure. I'm like, I don't think it was peer pressure. I would have signed up like that day. But then I took 24 hours to be like, no, it's the other part of me that's like saying, you actually do want to do it. It's not just to whatever. But so the community aspect was like, And just like I said, sometimes I would see you guys are writing. I wouldn't get onto the thing. My thing is just my square. It's not even my face. It just says my name. So I was like, okay, but like literally knowing you guys are writing because I saw in Marco Polo, I'm like, I'm not going to go on the group, but I know they're writing right now, you know? So it was like, just like you said, the energy literally spread out across the United States, right? Because we're all over the place. So yeah, and that's why I think about Nano. And I think we're all going to do that, or it seems like we're all going to do that. And just knowing, even if it's 2.5 weeks in, we're like, I am losing steam. We can then reach out to each other and be like, oh my God, that's how I felt 2 days ago. This is what I did. Maybe you should try this, or maybe, you know what I mean? Just like, so it's not just me in my own head, or each of us in our own heads, like either beating us down or, you know, like trying to make us, you know, give us excuses. It's sort of like, okay. And you can just get the pep talk from other people that literally understand, not just like, you know, the husband or the, you know, the mom that's like, yeah, you know, you're the best. And you're like, you
blindly supportive. The blindly supportive. It's like, thank you for your unconditional love that has no concept of what's happening here. And to that point, I think one of the things that helped me was that when I was struggling with like, what am I going to do with my story or what have you, somebody else would pipe up about something they were struggling with. And then I would immediately be thrust into the mindset of, it's normal to be struggling right now. Where if I were on my own, I might be thinking, you know, flip the table. This is why I can't do these things. I don't know how to get from act 1 to act 2. I don't know what my protagonist is doing. But if I see somebody else, you know, struggling with either the same things or similar things, it's like, right. That's the process. That's what we're doing. We're all here. And then, you know, to see us slowly degrade over the weekend and the bags under the eyes and everything, it's like, yes, you feel what I feel now. You are exhausted from just sitting down in front of a computer. I'm not alone. I'm not crazy.
A couple of days I pulled up Marco Polo and I'm like, man, Amy, do you really record a video right now? You look bad.
I'm always there to support you with crazy hair, to make you feel welcome. That is a space for craziness. Oh my goodness.
And I think at one point or another, we all pretty much had crazy hair.
Right.
And
we gave up.
You know
we
what?
all
I don't
gave up.
care. You know, I haven't showered in 2 days. You know, this is where I'm at, you know?
Who we really need to get in on this conversation are the people that are in the Marco Polo, but were not participating in the 3-day novel. Like, did they start a separate Marco Polo where they were just like, all right, if this doesn't go back to normal, we're going to have to send help. They're looking a little ragged around the edges.
You know, Jennifer's like, she's sending us something for Nano. And I'm like,
she's worried about us.
Like listening to the Marco Polos. And she's like, okay, this is what they're going to need. We need like emergency kits. Like
shampoo, vitamins.
dark chocolate, you know, notepads, extra pens. Like, what are they, the scarves you put over your hair?
Bandanas. Everybody needs a bandana.
Yeah, we need a nano bandana.
Yeah.
I think it was cool though, because even though they weren't doing it, somebody would always pipe up with, oh, you guys are doing great. You guys are doing good. And that was really nice to know that even though they weren't doing this, they were still recognizing that it was difficult. And yeah, so that was cool.
Well, and I want to talk about the 2 things that I got out of this I got lots of things out of this, and like the camaraderie and the entertainment value was high. But for me, when Amy brought up the idea, I've done Nano a bunch of times and I was just like, oh, hell no, I'm not going to write a novel in 3 days. But then I thought about it, and I've never written more than about 5,000 words in a day, which is probably still a lot for some people, but I know people that do that routinely. And on Sunday, I think I actually crested 10,000 words, which I honestly thought was impossible. So now I know it's hard and it takes me the entire day. And, you know, some people might be able to do it in 3 or 4 hours. It takes me all day, but it is possible. But what was really the most important thing for me, and I know I've shared it with some of you guys, but the idea that I've really struggled with finishing longer projects and getting through like past the midpoint, past the 2/3 mark. like if you look at like story structure, I just get lost in it. I can't figure out where to go. I don't know how to end my story. And this has been dogging me for at least 5 years. A writer, teacher, friend actually did a tutorial with us a few years ago, partly because I was struggling. And she's like, why don't we just all get together once a week and talk it through? And I've still been struggling. And this thing, somehow I outlined, and I enjoyed the writing process all the way through, even with an outline. It was a very light outline, like sentence level, like this happens, this happens, this happens.
Jackie, don't you, I feel like you've maybe said either to me or in Marco Polo's you credit that it's it's maybe the content choice, that this is a thing that you've never, and I'm curious to hear from everybody about this too, if you wrote something that you typically write or something different, but you kind of shifted gears a little bit.
I think that's part of it.
And had an epiphany.
What I think I discovered out of it was, because I have struggled with structure and figuring out how to end things. And what I did was, you had said, don't get into big, thick world building and don't write such a complicated story. And I realized that in 3 days, I really couldn't. And so I took something that was much more lightweight. It had a little bit of a speculative fiction element, but I didn't have to do any world building to speak of. And I kept the story really simple. And what I learned, and because I got through it and the outline worked, and I had a really cool ending. And I mean, it's sort of got like little mystery elements tying together, which I'm like, I don't know how I did that in 3 days. But what I realized, and I think this is important for everybody, is you can have the dead simplest outline. Like, you know, once upon a time, this happened, blah, 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 the end, right? A simple, simple outline. But when you sit down to write and you add your characters and your setting and the conflicts that, you know, these characters are going to have, your story will be unique. And I think I always thought it had to be complicated to be unique.
Yes.
And so now that I figured that out, I'm like, I've overcomplicated all these projects and I can't finish them because I get myself in over my head, basically. And maybe a better writer or a more imaginative writer could solve these problems, but I'm just stuck. And I think keeping it simple works. And so when I do Nano and when I do my next novel project outside of that, like, just have a simple structure, have a simple story, and let the characters I think what it is give your characters room to breathe. Because things came up in my story that, like, there were some conflicts and there were some weird little scenes that came up that I had not accounted for. But as I let these characters be themselves, my antagonist, man, she caused some trouble. She did some things I didn't see coming because I let her be herself instead of deciding she has to do all these things, right? And so I really think keeping it simple was what allowed me to be successful and allowed me to finish a project of some length for the first time in years.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's huge for me because this has been a real stumbling block, as anybody who's seen me write knows. So, I mean, I'm really grateful to you, Amy, for coming up with this and for all of us to do it, because now I feel like I can actually do the big projects again.
Yeah, what's interesting is that I'm not sure you could even understand that lesson without the constraints. It's almost like what I always say, I love to dabble in flash fiction from time to time, because when you have to pull things so tight and tiny, it makes you think completely different about the word choice and the story, you know, like what story can I fit in this tiny bit? Right. And we were not really given a word count on this, but we were given the constraint of time, you know, like literally how much can I possibly write? You know, what is the biggest thing that I could do if I only have 3 days? And right away, you're just stripped of so much stuff you can't do. And so that's great that finally got you to that simplicity sort of epiphany. Amy, I know you wrote, it was like a cozy mystery, but it was like YA?
So what's interesting is I wrote a cozy YA with recipes. So
right.
So
how to forget?
A couple of weeks ago, maybe a month ago, was when I found out about cozy, and not to be confused with koozies. I know what koozies are, and to be perfectly honest, I was not impressed. Like, to me, it was very slow and really left some stuff open and whatever. So I read it just so I could try it and whatever. And then I started writing this, and I think it was the middle of the third day, could have been the end of the second day. Audria, who's not on the call with us, but Audria was like, "Are you writing a cozy?" I'm like, "Well, I don't know. What's a cozy?" And then when she explained what a cozy was, I was like, "Oh, what do you know? I am writing a cozy, and I'm including recipes." So the cool thing is that I didn't just write the recipes. I like narrated the recipes. So like one of them, I give the description of the cookie as a $50 size. And one of the things I say roundabout is, if you don't know what the size of a $50 is, I'm sorry for your education, and Google it. Like, so I completely get really snarky in my recipes, which is a completely different like tone for the rest of the book. I've never written a cozy. Most of my people die all the time in what I write. And I clearly do not write for teenage girls, but this book would be for teenage girls. And yes, someone dies, but all you do is know that they died. There's no cussing. There's no, there's nothing in it that, my 12-year-old niece couldn't read. So it's very different from what I wrote.
Why do you think that happened for this? Was it what about like having this challenge of like 3 days only made your brain just say, no, I won't do what I'm normally doing. Do you know? I don't even know, because I did the same.
No, because I normally can like literally look at something and be like, okay, I can write whatever about the microphone that I'm looking at, like no problem. For this, like we discussed it on Thursday and signed up on Thursday, and we were supposed to start Saturday morning. Friday night going to bed, I looked at my husband and I'm like, I still have no idea what I'm writing about. It could be about this or this, but we'll see. And what started is because I'm sometimes not the sharpest tool in the toolbox, lost a book that I was writing because I cannot find my hard drive.
Yes, that's correct. You're not alone.
There's a phrase that she says all the time in the book that I lost. And I kept thinking, I want to go back to that phrase. I want that phrase to be in the book. And when I thought of the phrase, I thought of the girl who was going to say it. And then I thought, she can be someone that's in a high school that may be a little developmentally delayed. Thank you. I was like, what is the word? But she's integrated with everyone, and she has these best friends, and they're like the popular girls, and they like take her under, like, so this whole storyline came out. And then I'm a pantser. So I literally sat down and said, from across the square, Susie heard that phrase. And then the story just happened. And the recipes, not even planned until she showed up with the first recipe. And then I was like, oh, I should put the recipe in.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't until I got to the second recipe that I was like, oh, I want to be snarky. And I went back to the first recipe. So it was completely unplanned. It was just, I wanted to use that one phrase.
Yeah, I remembered the Marco Polo when you were like, now I'm looking up recipes. This is now, there are cookie recipes in my book. And I was like, I don't know what's happening, but it sounds amazing. So unplanned, okay. And something completely different. Go ahead, Susie.
The thing that about watching Jackie go through this that was really exciting for me was when she got to close to the end and was so excited about what was happening with these characters and was so emotional about it. And I just kept thinking, I want to do that. I want to do that. And it was just really cool to watch you be so excited about what you were writing. That was nice.
Yeah, I definitely, I want to come back to that, Jackie, because that is a huge point for me. But Jamie, I just want to ask you, did you write like a story similar to what you normally write? Because I don't know if we talked about what your story was. Was it similar, or did you also sort of change gears?
Yeah, it started, the idea that I had was, you know, because the whole story genius thing was like a what if statement. So I was like, okay, what if a woman had something stolen from her that was irreplaceable? And what happens after? Like, how does that change her? Kind of, you know, and then she wants it back and all that stuff. And so that's what I started off as. And it, it got pretty dark, which is not unusual, but yeah, it's disturbing. Like, people were like, oh, I want to read it. And I was like, I don't think you do, because you might look at me like, really? So yeah, I don't, someone's like, oh, you share it? And I'm like, well, I can't share it because the whole thing, not that I think, I mean, mine won't even be qualified because it's too short, but it's, yeah, I was like, I'll write something
I
else.
don't think,
that
did they have like a word minimum? I don't think there's a minimum.
Well, they said, you know, for the novella, I mean, I'm like right around 10. So I'm thinking, well, whatever. It still has issues. So I'm not worried about
Still
that.
has issues. She's
Right,
like, I'm disqualifying it for one reason or another, and you won't stop me.
No, I mean, there's still things, I'm going to still probably work on it now and just see what happens. But no, and like I said, it's so, like, the character wanted something to happen, and like the story kept moving the direction, and I kept trying to make it not do that because I didn't really want to write about that. And then it just kept happening. I'm like, okay, fine, I guess this is where I'm going. And it just kept getting darker, and I was like, oh God. But yeah, so it's not happy. People get killed, and there's just bad things. But what I found interesting is that, like, and I said this to my husband, I was like, I'm really good at writing this kind of thing. And I'm like, that's kind of really strange. Like, it felt very comfortable to go there. Like, and I was like, wow, So yeah. So, like I said, I have written stuff like that before. Maybe not that.
Amy just wrote in the chat that you came over to the dark side.
I wrote something one time and I gave it to my mother, and she looked at me and she was like, are you my child? I stopped. Nobody in my family reads my stuff. And then I entered a contest a couple of months ago, and everybody's like, oh, I want to read it. I'm like, no. I want you to still like me. So no, I'm not sharing. So I totally get it, Jamie. Like, I totally get it, because I normally read stuff that nobody, like, I don't want people to read because I don't want them to know that came out of my head. This one, as soon as you can read it, honey, everybody can read it. Like, it's gonna be fun. But normally, no, I totally get it.
Yeah, so it's just, and I'm not like ashamed of it. It's not like that kind of thing. It's just sort of, yeah. And I wrote something really disturbing. Ooh, this was the thing that I won the third place in the contest in college. And even then people were like, I remember, because I had to read it to the class first because we were in a group, and then we all submitted stuff. And people looked at me and they're like, did you have a really bad childhood? Like, they were like, how would you even come up with this stuff if you look normal? And I was like, just, it happened in my brain. So yeah, I know the looks when you like look up from the end of your story and people like, like they feel, oh God, okay.
That's great.
You need help. But yeah,
so not totally unfamiliar ground, but not where you thought you were going in the first place.
Not where I intended at.
Not where you were trying to steer it away the whole time.
I was.
So yeah, Susie brought it up, and I definitely, this was the thing that was on my mind when I was asking you, Jackie, did you learn something about what you like to write? Because it was really, really beautiful to watch you go through the emotions of the whole process and enjoying, because I think it was twofold, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there were tears that you were experiencing the story and definitely like riding the emotions of what was happening to your protagonist and everybody inside. But I think part of it that played into it was also that you did feel so deeply, and that was like, it just kept like feeding it. And I've been there, and I wasn't anywhere near there for my story this time, but I was like, that's it. That is the moment I think we as writers all long for, and it was so awesome to see. So what happened?
It was twofold. So part of it was, my story is very undark. It's set in a high school, and it's I started the story with the idea that, because I just read something where I thought was really beautiful, where there's this longing to get to this place. And I was like, I want to write a story that has longing, you know? And then I thought longing for a person, like you know, because we've all been there, where we meet somebody and then they're gone, either they die or we can't find them again or whatever. And I wanted to try to capture that. So that, you know, I mean, that's kind of a tearjerker kind of thing anyway. But I didn't have a story idea in mind, but then I decided to set it in high school because I've been trying to write like YA stuff. And I created this scenario, which really touched me personally, and the way that I resolved it and the way my two characters kind of figure things out was just very emotionally. And like, I can still think about it. It's making me cry because it's like a really sweet romance. Like, it's the kind of thing that I would want to read or watch movies of because it makes me feel good. And, you know, I've been watching This Is Us, and that was definitely part of it. So anybody who reads it will see the This Is Us influence, the first season. Anyway, but it was also, like I said, being able to get through the story and coming up with an ending that wasn't just an ending, but fit and worked, and all the characters were true. And then I had this whole kind of convoluted, there was an issue of cheating and how they figured out who had cheated. It was this like really clever sort of thing that I came up with, which I don't know how I came up with it. I don't know where it came from, but like, and then when one thing didn't work and I'm like, how did that even work? And looking at it and reading it and going, it actually worked. I came up with an ending that was clever, that maybe you could kind of see, you know, I probably telegraph, and I actually sort of intentionally telegraph the ending in a way. You might figure out twists along the way, but you wouldn't know how I ended it. There's no way you could see this coming. And so, I was just really satisfied. And again, because I struggle with endings and struggling with that, you know, that deep, dark moment in the protagonist's life where they're trying to figure out how to get past this horrible crisis, you know, that part, I always have struggled with that. And, you know, like, what is it that really gets at them and how do they resolve it? And that's so hard for me. And if you look at the Save the Cat structure, you know, that dark night of the soul and all that, I just get really stuck. And this one, I just breezed right through it. Like, I knew exactly how it should work. And I was looking at the Save the Cat structure and it was fitting. And I'm like, how did I do this in 3 days?
And do you think that goes back to what you were saying before, that it was like a simpler story and that Dark Night of the Soul didn't have to be like world ending or what have you? Yeah.
I think not. I mean, nobody was in any physical mortal threat.
Right.
The world would not end. If things had not worked out for my protagonist, she would have still gone on with her life. You know, it would have sucked. But, you know, I think making the stakes not so dire helped. But I think it was just more of, because it was just really clear what she wanted and how things were supposed to work. And I maybe can credit Story Genius a little bit.
I was just thinking that.
It, you know, and she sort of was like, no, I'm going to get even. I'm going to make this work. Cool. And it just did. And because she did the things that she needed to do, she was able to get everything. Like, even now, it's only been 2 days and I'm still like, how did I come up with that? I don't know. But the fact that I had such a tidy resolution, when this has been the one thing, you know, like if I were the protagonist of my own story, this is the challenge, right? Like, I can't figure out how to get past this thing. I can't get over this wall or whatever. And that I did it. And I was just like, and I think that's one of the beauties of having that short time frame is, if you're going to finish, you just got to do it. You don't have a choice. And you don't have time to work on, you know, it's like when we do the stories on a call and, you know, in half an hour, you've written a story and you're reading it to somebody. You don't have time to go, well, but I could have done this or that. And I think going with your gut and going with your instinct and just getting through, you know, for anybody who's listening to this, if you struggle with this stuff, is, you know, there is something to be said about writing to a deadline and finding a way to create that deadline, maybe if you don't have an external one like a contest, because, you know, you don't have that luxury of wallowing in your own self-pity or whatever it is. If I can't figure it out, you just do it. Yeah. But that was, I think it was the combination of my characters all sorting things out and being just really happy with how it ended, and and then my own success. That's just together. I mean, I'm still like tearing up thinking about it. So it just was really powerful for me. You know, last night I went to bed feeling happy and content for the first time in ages, because I'm like, I actually did something that really worked, and I'm really happy. And what a great story. I want this to be a movie, you know?
That's
So,
great. Yeah, I think one of the great joys for me was just to watch everybody feel all the feels through this. I think we could probably all say this, being together over these months and talking about our writing goals and our ups and downs. There's often a lot of, I'm struggling with this, I'm having issues with this. And there was so much recognition of accomplishment in this weekend, in the way that I beg you to do every week, right? Every week I'm like, but what did you accomplish this week? You know, what are your achievements? Make sure we celebrate everything. And I did not have to say that to anybody at the end of this weekend, because everybody was like, well, look at what I did. I did this amazing thing. So I guess my last question to everyone is, are you going to do it again next year? Do you think you would do this again to yourself? 3 days full novel?
So I totally would. I'm with Jackie in that I've never finished a project this big. I get to, and I could feel myself get to this spot on Sunday. I get to a spot where I'm just tired and my brain isn't thinking and I don't know what I'm doing. But back to this group, I knew that you guys would be here. So I literally came in, got in the group, and then just sat here. I cleaned my desk for a couple of minutes just to like get my brain in it. But I wrote, let's see, 27,295 words in 3 days.
Wow.
I've never, like, I have another project going that I'm over 30,000 words in, but I've been working on it for 2 months.
Right.
Like, the only thing I've ever finished, like, book-wise, is I have 3 kids' books I wrote 20 years ago, and they're literally like 200 words a piece. So, I mean, they're finished, but, I mean, I have more than 200 words in the chat right there, so... it's kind of, you know, it was, I would totally do it again. It was the sense, and I'm not very good at ringing my own bell. Like, I'm not very good at being like, oh my gosh, look what I did. I would so much rather be like, oh my gosh, look what Jamie did, or look what Susie did, or look what Jackie, like, I'm so much better at that. So it's weird for me to feel so accomplished, like did something.
Undeniably, right? Like in this moment, you are undeniably, you can't.
I had goosebumps. Like, yeah, we
now
did.
I'm gonna cry.
Right? Like, we did it, and it's
there's no like greater thing that I could offer you guys, and I didn't do it, but to be here and be present for you guys, to have that undeniable feeling of accomplishment that, you know, because I think everybody, I think it's humanity, right? That we have these insecurities, and every time we start to feel something, I don't know if it's society that tells us like, don't be tooting your horn too much or whatever. We always find the thing to balance it out. But this is one of those moments that it's just like, no, you cannot take that away from me. Like, I did that. And I hope
I would totally do 3 more days just like it, just to feel this way again.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Jamie, how about you? You think you would do it again, or you would try to replicate this in some way? What are you thinking?
Yeah, I think what made it like definitely tempting is that it wasn't, you know, picnic on this day, picnic on that day, usual Labor Day things where you kind of feel bad if you stayed away for, you know, didn't go do the thing that, oh, it's the annual picnic, you're going to miss whatever. And then that's 6-7 hours of your day.
Yeah. So
the fact that I was like, I actually don't, you know, I can really devote like uninterrupted time. So if I had that again, I would do it. Honestly, it would depend on like kind of other things.
I'm in the same boat. Yeah. There's the whole like weird Labor Day factor that got me in here. Amy's like, nope, I won't let that stop.
No, I'm sick.
Something's up with Amy. She gets sick every Labor Day. How about you, Susie? You think, I guess the question is, because Jamie, I'm in the same idea as you, same boat with like Labor Day. This was a very sort of unique weekend, but would you attempt a 3-day novel again if it were on a weekend that sort of made sense?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Okay.
It was really, yeah. I think thinking of it Labor Day, like that's where my brain goes, is like plans, whatever.
Yes.
But if it was like some random thing and you had like 3 days, and I was like, well, I'm taking a sick day from work, and then I'm gonna do this thing. So absolutely, it was awesome. And if I knew about it, like not just a day ahead of time, and I could be like sort of in my head plan a little bit more, then I think I'd feel a little more comfortable going into it. But like Nano this year, like we're all going to like have time now to think about it, not write it, but think about it. So but absolutely, it was really fun, and just kind of called the challenge, like, can I do this and complete something that longer than I've ever completed, in that time frame? Yeah, I would definitely.
Susie, how about you?
Yeah, I think I would. And I keep thinking next year at this time, I will have written a lot more, and maybe I'll be better at it, and maybe it won't be quite so terrible next time. My story won't be quite so terrible.
Well, you see, and this is the unique thing too, that everybody's saying my story's terrible, my writing's terrible. You guys did great. I think Jamie said something like that. You guys are writing amazing things. And I was like, Jamie hasn't read a single word of what I've written. How does she know what I wrote? It's amazing. So, Susie, I don't know that I can trust that your words are terrible, because I have not seen them for myself, and I don't believe you.
Well, it's funny because I know some of you are reading The Artist's Way again, but she talks about shadow careers in there. And I have always thought of myself as a reporter or a copywriter or whatever. And right now I can call myself a writer.
Yay.
So that's a cool
mission accomplished. Jackie, you in for another 3-day novel writing bonanza?
There's part of me that says no, because
never again.
Not because it was a bad thing or hard, but because I'm afraid that I wouldn't have the same experience, right? That it would be
I just want to say, based on Amy's face,
fun.
I don't think she's buying it.
I mean, I think I would be afraid that I would be disappointed. It's like when you go to the amusement park the first time and you're like, oh my God, it was great. And you go back again, you're like, I thought this roller coaster was more fun, or, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But what I'm actually thinking is I liked my characters and my setting so much that I want to keep writing about them. And, I don't know, I almost think like I like the novella format even,
That was my first time even like shooting for that, and it was a lot of fun.
I've written really long things that are like 75,000 words or more. I've written lots of short stories, but I've never written anything that was complete in like 26,000 words. And I'm like, it's enough room to tell a whole story without getting really complex. Right. And I thought, maybe I should look at that. I haven't decided, but I'm thinking, maybe there's a whole series of these, which YA or maybe even middle grade stories that could come out of this, and maybe by next year I'll be ready for episode 5 or whatever of the Jenny and Holden show, like whatever, who knows, right? So awesome. I have to wait and see where I'm at, but if I don't get super discouraged afterwards and I can kind of sustain the excitement from this, I think I'll probably be a lot more inclined to do it again.
That's awesome. Yeah. Oh, ladies, I don't know if there's anything else anybody wants to add, but definitely, what is happening in the chat now? You guys are making faces at each other.
So I said that next year we all need to make sure we take Tuesday off.
Oh, hell yes.
Literally, people, oh my gosh, I forgot to tell you guys this. So because the whole weekend, I literally spent talking to 15 different people. I am an introvert. I do not people a lot. I do not want to people a lot. I just really don't like that many people, to be perfectly honest. And I spent the entire weekend talking to 15 people in my head all day. Yep. Come Tuesday, I literally felt like I normally feel on a regular work week on a Thursday. Like, I was done. Like literally, we went to Outback last night and I had bread for the first time in 2 weeks. Because I was like, I'm just eating whatever. I still got a salad, but still, I had the onion, I had the bread, I had the sweet tea. Because I was like, I don't care. I'm done. So I would definitely say that if we're in a work week where I actually have to like people when I'm done, I would have to take Tuesday off because it literally was like, and it was so weird. I was standing in my kitchen and I'm picking out a coffee cup in the morning and I'm like, why do I feel, it was all of that dialogue that I had.
There were people.
Well, I too much time with people that don't even exist.
They were fictional, but they were there.
I agree, though. I mean, it wasn't for me the dialogue or the peopling part, but the mental energy and the emotional energy of it. I mean, I was so keyed up when I'd go to sleep, I couldn't sleep. And then yesterday when I woke up, I had 3 hours of sleep because I had to be on a work call and I was just brain dead. And even if I had slept, I think I would have still been out of it because it was just
I didn't watch TV. I didn't read.
Yeah.
I mean, full disclosure for anyone listening, this is being recorded in what was supposed to be a book club meeting, but I could not look at a book. I could not look at words. I could not listen to words. So I did like manual labor in the house. We just started removing things and cleaning and everything. And I was just like a drone all day Tuesday because I was like, I can't, my brain has to be off. You can use the body, but that's it.
I want to add real quick because people will be listening to this later, and a couple of us have referenced our spouses and the support that we get at home, which was fantastic because my husband was like, aren't you supposed to be writing? Mm-hmm. How late are you staying? Like, what do I need to do to help you? It was great. But I want to make sure that we point out that not everyone in the group had that.
Right.
So it's not like, well, I don't have anyone supporting me. You do if you're in a group like this. Like that's the point of a group like this. And so even if all of us seem to have very supportive, those of us that are married have very supportive spouses.
Right.
But what if you're in a marriage where you don't have a supportive spouse, or you're not married, like you don't even have a roommate, like you don't have anyone to like make sure that you're accountable and support you and run ideas off of. It's okay because in a group like this, we have each other. So even if you don't have someone where you roll over and you tell them, I have no idea what I'm going to write the next day.
It's a different way to share the load. For sure.
Yeah. So it doesn't, like, I don't want anybody listening to this thinking, but I don't have anybody at home to support me. It's groups like this that make it like completely doable for everybody.
Yeah, I would definitely say, as the person that lives alone, my roommates, my cats and my dog were going, Mom, you're not paying attention to us. And they were like really misbehaving. So, like I didn't have any home support. Although my dad did call a couple times and say, how's it going? And he was really good about not taking up my time. So I appreciate that. That's awesome. I didn't have anybody to get me up, to make me food, to do the household chores. So I did a bunch of that stuff before we started. And I just relied on you guys. I just relied on Marco Polo. And I mean, I was sitting in Zoom the whole day, every day, pretty much.
Well, I remember there was one day where I left and I was like, it shows me that there's somebody in. And I'm like, there's somebody in here. Better not be Jackie. And it was. I'm like, you've been here all day.
I mean, I pretty much would get up at like whatever time it was, like, and start writing at like noon or whatever time. And I was, the first 2 nights, I think I was working till 3 a.m. And then, obviously not quite as much on Monday night. But I just pretty much sat down in the chair and, I'd get up to get food or to walk around a little bit because, you can't sit for 15 straight hours. But, but I was, more or less button chair the whole time. Yeah. And I figured I might as well have Zoom on and, know other people are around.
You were a bit of an inspiration, ma'am. Definitely helping me out.
Well, I would have never finished had I not, because I'm not, when I'm doing it, I'm not fast. And I think, the other thing to remember for anybody that's wanting to do this is you aren't writing for 15 hours. You may be even sitting in front of your computer for all day, but you're checking Facebook or you're,
researching.
researching, oh, the things I Googled so many things. Or you're cleaning off your desk, or you're, whatever. You find things to fill in that time. So,
Right.
And that's normal.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
like Jackie's saying, I actually planned out, I knew how many words I wanted to write every day, broken down into how many hours did I want to actually write, and then could I write a number of words in that time block. So I actually blocked myself out to where I tried to stick to 2 hours on, an hour like walking around the house, playing with the dogs, eating food, washing dishes, like whatever, 2 hours, and then an hour off. Like I did 4 sessions like that throughout the day. So I don't want anyone to feel like, oh my God, I have to write. No, you don't. You break it down. Now the last day was a little, because you start doing a little more editing, and so I ended up being up until way past my bedtime. But I think as long as you like Jackie was saying, it's not a full butt in seat from the moment you get up to the moment that you just can't do it anymore. It was more about
need to take breaks. You have to take breaks.
You have to take breaks. What are you laughing at? Are you choking up?
Jamie and I hear it. What is that noise? It goes.
I got text message notices.
What is your ringtone? That is hilarious.
I don't know. It goes, yeah. I'm sorry.
I muted myself because I was like, am I doing it? I'm like, I don't hear anything.
Did I just mess up the recording?
No, that's fine. I leave that stuff in, or I find a way to take it out.
You guys were laughing at it. I'm like, surely they can't hear.
I was like, am I hearing that?
Oh my God. Guys, I can't thank you enough for letting me record this, because that's going to make my night a little bit easier, and I'm still not 100%. Well, even after saying goodnight to everybody and thanking them for letting me record, we continue to talk as we do. But in this case, we were talking about our submissions and what were some of the requirements needed, because Amy and I still hadn't submitted at the time of recording. But I want to give you a little peek into part of that conversation about what some of the ladies talked about in their cover letters in response to taking on this challenge in this unique way that we did.
Yeah, I just wrote a thing that said, I wrote this and thank you, and I had a good time, and I did it with a group of people over video, whatever, and I not wrote the book, but the weekend, and here's my bio and thanks, something like that. It just was like a little chatty note with my bio shoved in there.
Cool.
It wasn't even really
I did the same thing.
Yeah.
It included the phrase best support ever relating to you guys.
Love it. Love it.
Totally wouldn't have been able to do it without everybody.
I wouldn't have even
I would have
thought
given
of
up
doing it.
Friday.
If I had seen that link somewhere, I would have never, ever even.
I'm right. I wouldn't have done it. I wouldn't have done it. There were too many
I
reasons.
almost didn't share it with you guys because I
Can
was
you
like,
imagine?
yeah.
But when she shared it, I was like, nobody's actually going to do it. But then I looked at it and I'm like, am I crazy enough to do it anyway?
Well, the funniest thing is that she didn't even share it to say, should we do this? She said, has anyone heard of this?
Yeah.
Like, did you guys know anything about it?
Did you guys ever hear about this? And somehow that devolved into, take our money. We're coming. And then the best writing weekend ever. Amazing. Awesome. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why I called this week's episode the 3-Day Novel Writing Contest Winners. Thanks as always for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and if you haven't had a chance to do so yet, rate and review Stop Writing Alone wherever you listen to podcasts. Have a great week. Happy writing. I'll talk to you again next week. Before you go, don't forget to subscribe to the Stop Writing Alone podcast wherever you're listening to this episode today. Then connect with us on Facebook at Stop Writing Alone Facebook page or in the Stop Writing Alone with Nicole Rivera Facebook group. Check Instagram or Twitter where I'm at NV_Rivera to find links to our email newsletter. Happy writing. See you next week.